All right, everybody. Good Tuesday morning. We are back with another position with our draft evaluations. We are looking at wide receiver. That's right. Bumping along to wide receiver here. And I'll tell you, after what we've done over the last couple of weeks here, obviously the short term has been relatively handled for this spot, but the long term is very unclear. The only thing we can say confidently, positively right now is JSN is going to be the slot god for the next at least 5 years in Seattle. JSN will be the guy for at least the next 5 seasons, unless something disastrous happens, and that's hard for me to imagine. So we did sign Cooper Kupp. That could end up being a glorified 1 year deal very easily if we don't like what he does this year. At best, it's a 2 year deal in all likelihood. MVS is a literal 1 year deal. Derek Young's on the last year of his contract. Bobo's on the last year of his contract. Cody White signed a 1 year deal earlier this offseason. So there's not a lot we can say about the long term of this receiver room. And JSN is the one thing that we can say, and he's very good. But he's a slot receiver, and you need to give him other players to take pressure off of him, or his ability to affect the game will be stymied. It will be limited. So we got to try to find other players that can help him along on his journey. And there's a very good chance we find that guy in this draft, and it may even be somebody that goes very high in this draft. So let's go through the receivers in this draft. We're going to start with the round one guys. And the way I see it, there are 4 of them. So we'll do the first 2 in this video. We'll do the next 2 in the next video. First guy, this is generally considered to be the best receiver in this class. Tetairoa McMillan. I probably butchered that, but that's okay. If we draft him, I'll figure out how to pronounce it. But I don't think we're going to draft him because he's a little too good. Wildcat, 22 years old. He's got size. That's his main calling card as a trait-filled toolbox. He's got big size. He's got height. He's got weight. He's got big hands, if that's something that you value. Only thing that's a little bit odd is he's kind of got short arms. You would expect a player this big to have longer arms, but regardless, this guy has a big size advantage on most players in the league that he will be dealing with defensively. Every big board has him in the top 15. In fact, everyone except ESPN has him in the top 10. The aggregate has him at 7th. So the odds of him being there at 18 are very, very low. Really productive the last 2 years. 130 targets each of the last 2 years, over 1,300 yards, 85 to 90 catches, almost 16 yards per catch. Just been a really productive player at Arizona. And yeah, so to run through McMillan in terms of what he can do on a football field, in terms of traits and actual ability, his elite size just makes him really hard to cover. He's, you think about a stud 6'4" wide receiver in the NFL over the last couple of decades, he'll probably remind you a little bit of those guys, right? He doesn't have elite speed, but he can be Drake London. He can be Mike Evans. Those guys didn't have elite speed either. This guy can do what those guys did. He's got a good feel for zone coverage. He knows how to find the openings in zone coverage, knows how to get to the holes in the zone and sit down in them and wait for the ball to come his way. He's got a big catch radius. If you throw him a bad ball, he will try to go get it. You throw an inaccurate pass, he'll find a way to rescue it. He's a skilled hand fighter as well. He's somebody who knows how to use his hands to uncover at the last second and get that little inch of separation he needs to bring in the passes. He's excellent around the boundaries. He's got great spatial awareness, really good at getting his feet down in bounds on these boundary throws, really good at working near the, out of bounds marker and the end zone marker, really good at making sure he gets his feet down for catches. He's got good burst to get open. He doesn't necessarily have top line speed, but his burst to get open is impressive and good enough. He's also got some surprisingly good yards after the catch skills. He can get the ball in his hands and run with it and find ways to make things happen using his size and his vision. So he is a yak threat. And he's never really had anything that I would say was very special at the quarterback position at Arizona. So without great quarterback play, he's been about as productive as you can imagine. So great prospect, definitely worthy of being in the top 10 in my book. Now, that does not mean he's a perfect prospect, of course, and the weaknesses with him are pretty obvious. I think he actually ran an unofficial 40 time of like 4.54. So he's not very fast. He's actually got below average speed. It's not his game. It's not a big problem, but it does separate him from the Calvin Johnsons of the world and the Malik Neighbors of the world, and maybe even like a Brian Thomas Jr. There is a little bit of space between those guys and this guy because he just doesn't have the ability to really take the top off by just running really fast in a straight line. His route running could be better. There are some rough edges, just the ability he cuts off his routes, the ability to have a very sharp turn to his routes, the ability to plant and turn, the ability to just really get the little minute, how should I put this? The little minutia of running routes in the NFL. Doesn't seem like it's all the way there yet. Even though he's big, and I think this will work out, he's not great at dealing with press coverage on the outside, and McMillan is going to need to be able to play on the outside. If he gets to the NFL and he can't get open because of press, then I think that that's going to be a big issue here. You can't spend a pick this high on a player and find out he doesn't know how to play outside. So he's got to get better there. I think that he will. It's a little Rome Odunze like, really, with McMillan. He's gonna make a lot of contested catches at the NFL level because he doesn't really get open. He doesn't separate, and he's good at it. But sometimes it's gonna annoy you that he ends up in contested catch situations, and they're not always gonna work out. There are gonna be times where you look at him and you go, man, I really wish this guy was getting open so he'd have a more easy opportunity to bring in a ball. I wish that this guy was just kind of building separation that he never really builds. So you're going to have to learn to live with that. And I don't think it's hard to live with. I really don't. But it is worth noting he's going to live on contested catches at the NFL level. And I do wish he had a higher ceiling with his speed. But he's clearly the best receiver in this class, the most well-rounded, the most likely to be a stud. A lot of people compare him to Drake London. There are other comparisons people make, like Garrett Wilson. Hard to imagine him not being at least good. Maybe he won't be all-pro, but he should be an efficient 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL. So I'd say bottom of the top 10 is about right. Like, the aggregate has him at 7. I might put him around there. Maybe I'd put him around 8 or something. I'm not sure, but that's about right. That's the right idea. Okay, so that's your number 1 receiver in this draft for sure. The number 2 guy right now, and there's actually a very close race between 2, 3, and 4, but right now it is Luther Burden of Missouri. And this is where this draft class takes a little bit of a interesting and, for the Seahawks, maybe not so great turn. Luther Burden, 21 years old, out of Missouri, coming off a disappointing season. I know he missed time, and I know there were some issues at Missouri, but it was a disappointing year. He's not that big. He's 6 feet flat, but not tiny. He's actually got a good amount of weight to him, so he's built solidly. I'll say that for him. Got very small hands. I did note that. Kind of short arms. Ran a good 40 at the combine, 82nd percentile. 1.54 10-yard split was a little above average as well. So that's all he did in terms of the measured drills, but it was fine. Every big board has him in the first, except for the Draft Network that has him 1 pick out of the first. The aggregate has him going 25th, so he's a late first rounder. And you're mostly looking at what he did in 2023 when he had 1,200 yards and was one of the best receivers in college football. But very talented, very productive, very capable, for sure. Straight line speed is good for him. He can run in a straight line very fast. You get the ball in his hands, he can make things happen. He can elude tacklers. He can elude. He can weave his way through a defense. Got good vision. His ball skills are excellent. You put the ball in the air around him, he's going to go get it. He's going to make a play on it. Doesn't really matter if it's behind him or in front of him or ahead of or above him. He's going to find a way to make the catch. He's going to put himself in a position to make the catch. He is not relegated to just making plays around the line of scrimmage. He can make plays deep. He can make plays intermediate. He makes plays all over the field. He's a legitimate vertical threat. He's got great hands. He can uncover quickly. He's got the ability to use his acceleration and his short area quickness and his change of direction to quickly get open. And he finds holes in the zone defenses instinctively. So a lot of good positive traits here with Burden that I think probably should make him a first-round pick. He did have a disappointing 2024, like I said. He didn't have the big breakout some people were hoping. Before the season started, I think Burden was being talked about as a top 15 pick. Now he's not because of this. He is small. He is a little bit on the smaller side. And overall, you are probably looking at a slot-only guy at the NFL level. I think he'll be able to play on the outside a little bit, but he's clearly meant to be a slot receiver. So that's going to disappoint some people, especially Seahawks fans, because we already have our slot receiver and you don't need a bunch of slot receivers. Some would argue we're already double dipping by signing Cooper Kupp, but if even though I think that's exaggerated, we certainly don't need to spend a first-round pick on another one. Physicality seems to really take Burden out of his game. If you're physical with him, makes life hard. I do think there's a little bit of laziness in his route running. Like he'll come up lame. He'll stop his route and run his route kind of slow if he knows he's not the primary option. You don't like it. And for the most part, while I think his skill set is complete, it is worth noting, for the most part, Missouri used him as a player to catch short passes and then try to do something with the ball in his hands. They would get him the ball on screens, dump offs, quick curls, basically plays where he catches the ball within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage and would try to make a play. So we haven't seen a lot of him doing other stuff. I think he can do it, but I think like 75% of his targets were within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So I don't feel like we got a full picture of what Burden can be, but I still suspect that he will be a slot receiver, a great slot receiver in the NFL, like JSN is right now, like Amon-Ra St. Brown is right now. I don't know what he's going to be able to do beyond that. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to play outside. I think physicality is going to take him out. I think getting into tighter areas with better boundary defenders outside is going to be a problem for him. And I think that his home in the NFL will be in the slot. So I think he's worth a late first rounder for any team that lines up in 11 heavy personnel. But I don't know if the Seahawks are going to be that, especially with what they already have. So I would say that in general, objectively speaking, he's a first round player. Would not take him as a Seahawks fan, and would only take him if I was coached by a very particular offensive mind. Not that 11 personnel guys are uncommon these days. Okay, so that's what I can say about Burden. So those are the top two receivers right now. McMillan is mostly universally considered wide receiver one. Burden, there are a couple other guys. We'll talk about them in the next video. See you guys soon. Go Hawks.